And we're live.
Okay, sweet. I'm going to present to everyone. There you go. Welcome to lesson number 4. This is fourth time we've done this, right?
Think so, yeah.
Okay, cool. All right, I'm going to try to keep this short and sweet. It's 9:16 right now. Let's shoot for 9:45. Done. Sound good?
Totes.
Cool.
Yeah. Okay. So where we last left off last week, we were doing our calculator exercise, right? We got this bad boy. Jen, you mentioned to me earlier today that you tried and failed at some things.
Many.
Ditto.
Ditto. So why don't we
I added a clear button.
that
Probably programmed it wrong, but it works.
Yay, Jen!
define works. Okay, here you go. So if I hit this, oh man, this is totally broken. If I hit that,
Clear
hey,
button works though.
this calculator is cursed with JavaScript. Nice. Let's see if Cassie's is cursed. It doesn't even work.
So cursed, it's not even showing up.
Here, let's.
Oh no, it doesn't show up because it made no sense to me.
It made no sense to you.
No,
Interesting.
no, I mean the actual, like, looking at all my notes and stuff, it made no sense to me, like,
I think
trying
I
to
can
figure this out.
break.
Well, it looks like calculator's gone now.
Eh?
Did you? Yeah. Yeah, it looks like calculator does not exist on your repo, Cass.
No, it doesn't. That's what I mean. It didn't make sense. Like, my notes didn't make sense.
Ah, okay.
So trying to figure it out.
Okay, fair enough.
Said I
So-
unbroke the calculator. Let's see.
You unbroke the calculator?
Maybe.
Does that qualify as fixing the calculator?
Nope, never mind.
Okay.
I don't have it.
So I will not use this code in the example. So we had one thing I left as let's figure out how to stop it from always doing 0, right? So that was one requirement. I don't remember mentioning a clear, but it's good to have it. So I will add that on mine. And then, actually, let me run a diff. This isn't committed, right, Jen?
Nope.
Okay. So I'm going to run a diff between my file and your file. Now, I think we've covered this before, but we can run a diff and just compare two files by saying diff. And give it the file that I'm going to compare it to with yours, Jen. So I'm going to go up two directories, hit Jen, lamp, and calc.php. And okay, so this is how it reads. So calc of doom is yours. And so on my page, I'm doing, so anything that has the left arrow, so pointing left, is my file, or the first file. Anything that's pointing right is the second file. So here's a diff between these two lines, and it should be line 7. If we were to look at line 7, hey, there's the title right there. So pumping over to here, so this is the diff between line 7, this is the diff between line 21. So let's look. It looks like you added a clear button, okay. Then you have, since this only exists on yours, it says there's a difference between on line 25 and 26 through 29 for the right. So 26, 28, or 26, 27, 28, 29, if that makes sense.
Is there a reason why it wouldn't just say 25 through 29?
Well, my line is 25. I don't know what the syntax that they decided on, but it's comma delimited instead of a dash. So that's all. Now with SVN, or actually this isn't SVN. This is Linux. But since now you're 4 lines ahead of me, Jen, it's comparing 34 with 38. So my 34 is pretty much the same as your 38 in showing that this is a difference in this line. Anyways, you've added this button, so I'm going to go ahead and add that button into mine. So this guy, and you also added this here, so I'm going to add that right. Okay, right there and right there. And lastly, you also added a couple styles for clear button. So the calc value. So is there a reason why you just, so I see like you have clear button right here?
Yeah.
Right. So here's a trick that you can do. An object can have multiple classes. So if this is the same as the button, so get rid of the dot, now it has both the clear button class and the button class. So you don't even need to have that there, and you're good. So I could have done the same as big button. So I could have given big button also the class of button.
What's the point of giving it different names if you're just going to stick it all, or it's like got 2 classes?
It does have, you can have as many classes as you want.
Yeah.
That way it would be shorter, because frankly, if I just gave this button as well, so button, and I got rid of that guy and that guy, now button carries over to all of these things, and I can specifically call out big button, saying that big button is going to be 200 pixels.
Same with the button hover?
Button is this main one, and it looks like I have, oh, looks like my style got removed. Yeah, that's weird. Okay, and yeah, it looks like that's really weird. Here, let's, oh, I had that highlighted. That's what happened. So I'll revert that back and add that guy. And here we go. So it looks like big button isn't carrying over. What's the reason that big button isn't carrying over? So here's the reason. Now, Jen, this is I briefly mentioned this to you kind of randomly, but there's such thing as CSS points, and this is how CSS is rated. Okay, so getting into kind of like what rule has more authority. So like let's say this is a rule and this is a rule. Right now, they both have the same authority, because a class, and I could be getting these points wrong, and I can look it up after, but let's say a div, so a general div or an element, like body, is worth 100 points. We'll just say that's worth 100 points. An ID itself is worth 2. So an ID has more authority or less authority than the general element. And then a class has 1 point. So if a rule for the, let's say we had an ID on this button, or okay, here's a better example. If we had a rule of, or if we had a class of test or whatever, and all my test objects have a width of 400, but specifically the ID that I'm calling out has a width of 500. IDs have more points than classes, so the rule for calling out this particular class or the ID is going to have more authority than the class itself. So here's a good example, and this is exactly it right here. So we'll say width of 50 pixels, okay? So both of these qualify for the div, but nothing happened, even though this has the class of test. And if I were to look at, let's get that out of here. So this here has, you can see that this rule is actually losing, and this is what won. And that's mainly because IDs have more points than a test or than a class. But if I, let's say, added a div to it, so I said any divs with this class should have more points. Okay, so this should get knocked out to, actually I think there needs to be a space. Uh-oh. What's my deal? What is this? Maybe I am getting my points mixed up, and the ID has more points than the div. I'll have to look it up, and we can cover that in a different lesson. I don't want to get held up on this. So, anyways, if I were getting back into the original version of this, I'm going to give this a div. And this now has more points again. So this rule, let's say, has 101 points, and this one just has 1 point. The one with more points is going to win. And I'll look up. I forget the official name, so I'll look up what has more points and what would win. But essentially, you set up all your rules. The things that are going to have more points have precedent, and then it'll cascade into the lower ones. That gets into the cascading style sheets idea. So anyways, we have our calculator equals that. Okay, so mine's still working, but my clear button, actually, does my clear button work? Yeah. How did my clear button work? What does the clear button do? Oh, you're passing in a number of 0. That's weird. Huh. Why wouldn't that be? Okay, so that works, but somehow my clear is actually working already? Okay, so you have a set action of 0. Oh, okay. That's some carrying over stuff that you put up, Jen. So let me open up and see what's going on my instance. So set action of 0. So this is actually kind of breaking it, I would say. I'd probably make a new function, Jen, of clear.
Oh, I just added it into the switch.
Added it into the switch. So
but of course,
oh, okay.
It's probably way better.
Well, because there's a bunch of things that the clear needs to do.
Right.
It needs to make sure the current value is 0. It needs to clear out the stored value. It really is like a reset, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I would say, so calcval, we'll put current value. Current value is 0. Action type, we'll say stored value is also 0, just to get everything back on a clean slate. And then action type is, we'll say, because like we'd want this to even work if you're in the middle. Like if you said, I'm hitting this plus, but I want to clear it out. I want to reset the entire thing. So like action type, it's pretty much you want to get all of this data back to how it is. So we'll ditch that.
So not saying it's false puts it back to also to ignore it?
It kind of just, we'll say it devalues what it was. So everything starts out here. So we have current value, we have stored value, action, and action type. Okay, so when set action happens, we set it to true, meaning that when action has happened, like when I click divide plus multiply, it means that now my application is ready to move the next value into the current value instead of the stored value, or it prepares it. Because when action is true, it will it'll make the string, it'll make the number a string, like concatenate it, and then it sets the action to false. Now knowing I'm not in the new action state, I'm in the matter of storing numbers into the string. And then it defaults back to here. And then on action type, if it's any one of these things, it will do an action. But action type is now empty, so it's not going to do any of them. So here, if we hit clear now, so let me, oh, that's interesting. Clear, okay. Clear, all right. Still got this going, so we'll make that work. That's fascinating that on a refresh it's probably because it's a form element and it's still keeping the same values. So like 36, if I hit times, clear it out, that's not going to work. Equals doesn't do anything yet. So that's how I would do the clear. Mainly just, instead of clear, it's really just reset, frankly. And go from there. So now clear actually calls that function. Clear. Oh, great. And I broke it. Calc value, current value. So let's do console log current value. Oh, I think I know what's going on. I think this needs to be a string again. What was that weird thing that it was doing last time? Really? Okay, well, I'm going to give this 30 more seconds of work, and then let's get into what the real lesson is today. Oh my gosh. Isn't it awesome just watching me type stuff?
Of course.
Yeah. Okay.
So fun.
And what's my console saying? Nothing's happening in the console. Awesome. So it doesn't look like clear is even working, which is interesting.
What did I do?
We'll do an alert real quick. Again, it's like sometimes you just need to make sure that something's connected. Oh, you might be. It might be that the cache is something's wrong in the cache. I need to get out of Firefox. I'm gonna go to Chrome. I never develop in Firefox. So Sky. No, it's still broken. Okay, well, Jen, your way, I might actually say right now is what was working. So
Right.
screw it. I'm fine with going with that. Let's see. Oh, but it's empty now. Oh, you put a 0 in, right?
Yeah.
Okay, well, I'd say I might revisit this to get back into mine because I'm not quite sure why this isn't even working. So function clear, I'm wondering if that's a specific keyword that JavaScript needs or something. I don't know. Okay, so let's get into positioning. Also, by the way, so we still have this issue, right?
Yeah.
So selected number, right? I would just say if selected number, if num equals 0, so equals 0, else do all this stuff. So I would probably just not even register that, like if you're to the state where num equals 0, and also we'd have to put if current value is 0.
Oh, I tried this earlier with Yamada.
Oh, you're blaming Yamada now?
No, I'm blaming you for making weird scripts.
You're blaming me.
No, I'm blaming JavaScript.
Okay, so we're good now.
No, hit the other buttons. Oh, down.
Boom! In your face, Jen.
Ah, shut up.
Yeah. So really the logic is, oh, if the number that you're putting in is 0 and the current value is 0, then do nothing.
So you don't actually, if you don't put stuff in the brackets, it's just not going to do anything?
Yeah, and nothing qualifies. You can change it to this if you wanted. So, but I don't like that logic because there's probably a hole in it actually. So I'll say do nothing. There you go. So that's a little comment for me saying, oh, this is supposed to do nothing. But any other condition, do all the work that I set up. So anyways, let's get into the real work today. And hopefully we can do it fast because apparently I'm only going to be teaching you for the next 6 minutes. So we'll do a little bit of time. So moving stuff. The whole thing about this class that I wanted to do is at least set up how to position things. So actually we'll do calc. That one's a better example because there's a lot of stuff on index. So I'm lazy right now. I'm just going to put all this in here. Get rid of this junk. And here's our new page. So the things I wanted to cover today were about positioning, and that is I'm going to kind of finish, or not finish, but again bring up floats. We talked about them a little bit yesterday with last lesson with this calculator because we're floating all these elements. So floating is one way to position. Setting the positioning type. So there's absolute, fixed, relational types. And I'll break down each one of those. So let's start breaking down the positioning first. So I'm going to say fixed div. I'm going to do an absolute. Absolute. And relational. Okay. Have you guys touched any of this before, as far as positioning goes, or is this all brand new?
I might have, but I don't know that I knew what I was really doing. Okay.
Fair enough. That's half of programming, is really not knowing what you're doing until you figure out what you're doing.
Oh, that's normal? That's a normal feeling?
Yeah, I mean, I've just been doing it the last 6 years, so I know more stuff now. So I'm going to set all of these as demo, so that we can break down all of them. So demo is gonna have a width of, do 100% width, and we will do a height of 80 pixels. Oh, misspelled height. Okay, background, we're gonna set a background color of a lot of this stuff, so we'll say blue, green, red. And moving stuff.php. Okay, so pretty easy. We'll also say color, just so it's a little easier, is white, and we'll do padding 15 px, just so it's a little bit more readable. Let's knock this down to 50. Okay, so fixed, absolute, and relational. This might actually not be as helpful now that let's say that well, let's get a lot of lips in. We need some text to make some here, just for you guys. And no, screw it. Bacon. I'm gonna go with that.
Bacon Nixon.
15 paragraphs. Give me bacon. Wow. You know, people make websites from weird shit. I'll just say that. Okay, so here's our page.
Oh God.
Yeah, this is terrible. Why don't we? I'm gonna actually get rid of all that stuff, and we'll just. There you go. That's a little bit more readable. But at least we have a scrolling thing, just for demonstration. And so I think fixed is probably the easiest thing to talk about first. So fixed, let's say positioning or position fixed. We'll see what this does. Okay, now so our absolute went away.
Oh.
And there's a reason for that. Here, we'll comment out this stuff real quick. So absolute's back, right? Position fixed, something happens to absolute, which is weird because we're setting the position on fixed, not on absolute, but something's happening here, okay? Now, if I scroll, you'll notice fixed stays, okay?
Whoa.
So much like, let's say, a nav might stay up, so fixed, you're actually just saying this is the fixed position for the entire screen. No matter where you are on the actual page, this will stay fixed to that. And you'll notice behind it there's a green. That's our, if I can, absolute right there. So what happens is when you set it to fix, it actually kind of takes it out of the entire flow of what's currently on the page. And this is more of like this top level. I'm just going to stay fixed right here. There's literally nothing you can do about it. No element is going to mess with me. And you can set positioning. So let's say I wanted to just say bottom. Okay, I'm going to say bottom is 0. Let's see what that does. It's going to move it to the bottom.
Oh.
So the way that fixed works is like you can say top. Let's see what happens if I say top. So top is 0 and bottom is 0. What's going to happen? Okay, so top's winning, and look, it actually nudged it all the way to the top. So now, there's really no margin, because when you're setting it there, there's kind of like a default value that's sometimes set that is more just a browser setting. If you set top, it is going to be 0 pixels on the top. Now, here's a cool thing. I need to get into editing this stuff. I rarely do front-end work, so I need to. It'll be easier to actually display stuff on the fly this way. So we have our fixed position. If I change top, so let's say top is 10 pixels, it'll actually move it down. Because it's saying right now there's 150 pixels between this element and the top of the page. Okay, if I turn this off and it goes to the bottom, if I raise this up, it's actually going to say there's 50 pixels from the bottom of this thing to the bottom of the page. Now another thing to keep in mind, you can actually do negative numbers. So negative 50 pixels, it actually nudges it down the bottom. So that's pretty much fixed in a nutshell. Now if I were to say, let's say that I actually nudge this over to 40%. So top and bottom work, but so do left and right. So left, we'll say left is 0. This should nudge it all the way. Right? So now you see that it's like pressed all the way up against this edge. If I turn that off, there's the natural padding of the browser. Okay, I turn it back on, it's there. I can do right, let's say 10 pixels, right there. So it kicks it over, and now there's 10 pixels, and if I scroll, it's locked in. So you can do a combination of anything you want. So let's say the top is 150 pixels down, and on the right it's 10 pixels away, or let's say 20 pixels away. This will always be that absolute, or this will be the fixed position wherever you are on the page. So that's fixed. So absolute. Absolute's kind of like fixed, but absolute is instead of where the screen is. So let's say this is fixed is looking at wherever you're looking on the screen. Absolute is for the entire page. So the entire page, as in this top to all the way to this bottom. So if let's get into, I'm gonna turn off fixed for now. Or let me get back into my editor. Okay. So fixed. Okay, so that you can comment out block the lines in CSS, by the way, like that. So position absolute. Okay, let's see what that does. So position absolute. All right, so something happened now, because now relational's gone. If I were to look at this, and I went to absolute, if I turn off absolute, relational's back. Turn it off, it's gone. Now here's the thing. Absolute, how it works, so if I scroll, it's still with the page. Okay? If I kept fix on, fix would come with me. But absolute is now setting, this is the absolute position of the entire, or wherever the whole page is. Now right now, absolute isn't really doing much other than, and if I looked, if I actually hid this, I can, let me hide this element. So display none. So relational actually just went behind absolute. So if I were to, let's see what happens if I put relational in while absolute's going. Or, I'm sorry, relative, my bad. Again, I haven't done CSS in some time. Okay, so relative. Okay, nothing happened. I have, oh, did I not save it? Relative. Oh, I didn't change the CSS. Okay. Whoa, so now relative is in front of absolute. Absolute's still around, but relative is now in front of it. Let's go with absolute. There's a thing called z-index, because you'll notice like things are behind things now. So z-index applies to, it can apply to many things, but I'm going to say 12 is the z-index. So now let's say there's an idea of layers on the page in like a three-dimensional space. So z, we have x that goes side to side, y that goes up and down, and then z, which is like towards us or away from us. So I actually, pixels is wrong. It's just numbers. So z-index is 12. Now let's say I want to set the z-index to 15. Now that one's ahead. Okay, so it's really, if you get into the matter of layering things, actually I'd be curious. Let's see how we do, if we do a position, get rid of position fixed. So right now relative is winning because it has the highest z-index. So even though fixed was on the page, you'll see it's like behind you. And this is like a kind of a lame way to do parallax scrolling, by the way. But there's some better ways. But fixed, I mean, think about it. You set a fixed image behind something and have it scroll behind it, like it's fixed on the page, you know. So there's some interesting tricks that you can play around with later on. So let's get into the difference between relative and absolute. Relative is based on its parent. So right now the parent is the body. So this isn't a very good example. Let's do we'll do parent class. So absolute parent and the absolute parent and relative parent. In the sense of this is the thing, this is the container for the div that's inside. So right now this shouldn't really do much because, oh, this, by the way, this fix thing's messing with me. So I'm going to get rid of the z-index stuff so that we can get back into things. So the relative stuff, right now, it's based on its parent. So let's actually do relative parent, absolute parent. Okay, I'm giving myself 3 more minutes. So we're going to finish this, and then maybe next lesson we'll go over floats and more positioning stuff. Fortunately, we've already gone over some floats, so we'll say that all divs float right now. Left, and they're all of a width of 50. Do 60%. Okay, what happens? Okay, so something interesting happened here is because, so the fixed stayed. So the fixed is 100%. One, because there's no parent in here. And two, it actually looks like div has less points than a class now that I'm finding out. And I'll follow up next week. But this applied to the parent. So this div parent. But it didn't apply to the absolute parent. So what's going on here? So we'll do relative, and we'll just, for fun, we'll do a margin of 80 pixels on the top. Okay, so you'll see that the margin applied for the for the relative. I don't know if it's going to apply for the absolute, because look what happens when I do absolute. So getting back into top, if I did top of 0, I can still do a top for the absolute. But what happens? I don't think I can do a top with relative. Yeah, so top doesn't work for the relative because relative is based on what my parent div, this relation, relative parent. So this relative parent is here. It ain't doing anything. If I were to look at the absolute parent, it doesn't really have anything. You'll notice I've set, there's a height for this parent that's really just everything that its child has. So its child has a 50% or a 50 pixel height with a 15 padding, and you'll see that with this here. So padding, content, margin, and that information carried over to the parent. When I'm hovering over the parent, all of this is blue. It means the height is taken over the whole thing. But the same rule doesn't apply to the absolute parent. The absolute parent says that its height is 0, even though that there's a absolute that has this height, and margin. And it's because absolute actually ignores its parent. Especially now that I have top on here. If I turn this off, let's see what happens. Still the absolute parent is 0. It's because absolute kind of ignores its thing, and it's just the absolute overall part of the page. It's no longer relative to where its parent is. It'll just go wherever it wants based on where you set on the page. And the only difference between absolute and fixed is where you're viewing on the screen. So this here, what we see, is the full range that a fixed can go, and it'll stay there. Absolute, the full range is this. It's throughout the entire thing. So if I actually said absolute and then bottom, oh, not on demo. So absolute bottom of 0 pixels. Absolute. Uh-oh, what? Why isn't it? Interesting. So I'm wondering if it's only where the fold is, because I thought that that would actually go all the way to the bottom. Here, let's try it actually on the page and then refresh. Bottom. See what happens. So it's actually just going with the fold, which is fascinating.
So this is kind of why everyone has such a hard time making footers,
Yes.
according to the internet.
Well, footers are kind of hard, especially if you want like a sticky footer. Because let's say, this is a good example of, let's get rid of these guys here, and we'll just do a footer of this. Okay, so this makes sense. Hey, I have a footer that's all the way at the bottom, but sometimes the way footers are done, it's like, oh, I'm just going to have footer at the end of this. So if you have a super long page like we just had, it's easy to just say, we'll just say absolute. We'll get rid of this guy for now. So, hey, look, I have a footer at the bottom. Well, what happens when I get this? My footer's now at the top. How do I get it to stick here? So, but then if I put a position absolute again, well, now it's stuck at the bottom of this page, which is great until I do all this. And then it's just at the bottom where the screen is.
Wait, how did you make it stick at the bottom earlier?
How did I make it stick at the bottom?
Yeah, earlier when you were, you put like all the text back and it was underneath all of it.
Because if I get rid of absolute position, here it's all the way at the bottom.
Right.
So if I just go here, there you go. And you'll notice that it went from 100% back into 60%.
Right.
And that's because, again, absolute position ignores its parent. So it doesn't give a shit on how big its parent is. It will just ignore all of that and do its own thing. So, oh, this is back to 100%. My parent's way up here, but I'm just going to stick to the bottom of this page here. So, yeah, there's some wonky stuff. I would recommend taking, and I can commit this, I'm going to commit this to SVN, and you guys just play around with it. Because, honestly, I still don't quite get this stuff. I mean, I did at one point, and then I've just been out of it for a while. So I would say take this time and just play around with it, because things start clicking when, oh, I'm going to move this over here. I'm going to set this position to absolute as opposed to fixed, that kind of thing.
Hey, Scott.
Hey, what?
Can you remind me, I'm assuming it's SVN Co, but I cannot figure out how to download new files?
That would be SVN up.
Oh, well, that's why.
So SVN Co stands for checkout.
I'm not checking out a branch or something?
Nope.
Oh.
No, you've already checked it out. So let me show you real quick. I'll log in as you. And I think we had trouble on that first class, so I understand. So I'm now you, Cassie. So if I do SVN, and we can always see what the things do by doing a -- help. Any command, it works. Like grep -- help, same thing. So SVN -- help, and so this is, adding blame, which I haven't quite understood, and I rarely ever use. So SVN up or update means I'm just going to update my instance with what's on the branch, or what's on the branch. So co, like you say, is checkout. Like, I'm going to check out this branch, so that any commits that I make go to that branch, as well as any updates I do come from that branch. So I'm going to do an SVN up, and it pulls in all that stuff. So that just runs SVN update. Please update my instance with what's currently on the branch.
Okay, and I know that you just said this, but I seriously thought that it was checkout. So what is checkout compared to update?
That's an excellent question.
You can talk about it another time if you want.
No. This should be easy enough. So let's say you have nothing. You know that there's this branch out into the interwebs that you want to grab. So I'm going to just check it out in the sense of I want to pull a record into my dev thing and connect to this branch. It's pretty much just the setup. I want to, here's the location, I want to check out this stuff, pull it onto my own branch, so that any changes that I make locally will then be able to be pushed back up to the branch. And the push is a commit.
Mm-hmm.
But the checkout only happens first. So you can do, on an SVN help, you can do check out. So this is what a checkout does.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So here's how you do. So check out a working copy from the repository. So the usage is, I want to check out this URL, which is what I gave you in the beginning. If specified, so the rev, which is the version, like this is the revision number so-and-so, determines what revision the URL will first look up. So there's other flags that you can do. So this is a -R is saying the specific revision, force, username. This is a bunch of options or new flags that you can do. So we can do the same thing for update and see what the difference is. So this says, and there's a lot of stuff with update because it's really popular. Okay, that is, okay. So update. So brings the changes from the repository into my working copy. So it just says, hey, grab all the changes that were on the repo. Let's say Jen committed a change, and then now it's on the repo, and I'm going to pull it into my working copy. So now I see changes. If no revision is given, bringing the working copy up to date with the head revision. So you can actually say, I want to update an older revision to revert back. these are certain flags that you'll see. So A stands for added. So my revision just added this new file for me. A D stands for, hey, this file was actually deleted. So the update will delete the file for me. U stands for updated. That's just like a change. C is a conflict. Those are ones to pay attention to because there's actually an issue with the file. Let's say, Jen, you worked on the same line as Cassie, and they're two different things. They'll say, hey, there's a conflict on this line, and we can't actually update it until you resolve it. There'll be a flag of say, hey, you can't commit. You can't do anything with this file until it's resolved. And then merge. So this is, hey, you guys are working on the same file, but SVN's smart enough to merge it for you. And then these are some ones that you will rarely ever see. So that is update, if that makes more sense, as opposed to checkout.
So checkout is just what you do initially, and then after that, you're just updating it.
You got it. You're either updating it, which pulls in the new stuff for you to work on, or you commit it, which pushes it up to the branch so that other people can update their instance with your changes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think that makes sense.
Okay, cool. Okay, so I believe I committed my stuff, and I can just say SVN status to see, okay, I just have this file, which SVN doesn't know about, so it's saying, hey, I don't know what this file is, there's a question mark. So, we good? We ran a little long, but I will work more on getting my ducks in a row for this positioning thing, because honestly, I now realize it's been some time since I've been out of it. But hopefully enough information was given so that you guys can at least play around with it and make your own mistakes, because that's honestly how I learned, is trying to play around with it, because none of it really made sense until I was manipulating the things on my own.
Totally.
Cool. So should we just work on, like, for me, trying to make this calculator do something?
I'd say we're starting to have a good amount of different files. I won't give you guys any particular homework. I'd say pursue the things that you're interested in. In like, hey, I want to try out positioning. I'd say definitely spend some time with fixed, relative, and absolute. Because once you can kind of get those concepts in your head, it'll be a lot easier to set up a page. And then you're more than welcome to work on the calculator and add any things that you want to it, or even check out floats.
Okay.
Fun stuff.
Super fun. Okay, and as always, it was a pleasure, and I will talk to you both tomorrow.
All right. Have a good night.
Yeah, you too. Bye-bye.
Bye.